Welcome, guys, to the third episode of the Titans Talk 615 podcast. If you don't know me already, my name is your host, Jackson Weber. I appreciate y'all tuning in today. Folks, we got our first special guest of the show. Meant a lot to me. This is a huge special event, guys. I mean, this is a great guest who was on the show. Really took his time. It was a great interview. Great interview. My first interview. So I hope you all as much enjoyed it as I did. I'll definitely see you right after the show. And that's right, guys. We got the first guest of the Titans Talk 615 podcast, my man Lucas Panzica. Lucas, welcome to the show, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Man, I appreciate you having me. It's definitely an interesting time, a lot of optimism. Titans fans are excited again, which has been cool.
Exactly. It's a good time of year. And how you been? How was your offseason?
Offseason was solid. I mean, it's, just kind of plugging along in the pre-draft stuff. And the draft was a funny thing because, whether they're picking 5th or 7th or 11th or whatever, there's always kind of this discussion on who they're going to take and could there be trade possibilities. But we learned pretty quickly who the Titans were going to take. So from that standpoint, it kind of made the draft a little less interesting of a talking point. But no, obviously new quarterback means a beacon of hope and a lot of excitement.
And that's all I want to kind of get into first to Cam Ward expectations. How do you feel about Cam Ward going to the brand new offense this year around Brian Callahan?
Well, I mean, he's going to have to show it. He's done all the right things as far as, saying the right things, having the right mentality, the things that get a fan base excited. The thing I like about the guy is that he seems pretty unshaken. You know what I mean? He kind of, every time he has taken a step up in difficulty level, he's sort of elevated his game. So that's a huge positive, and he has to show it. And, he's got an offensive line that has as much to prove as he does, where the patience is going to wear a little bit thinner from the fan base for an offensive line that changed a bunch of parts and pieces. And obviously Bill Callahan is the chief of that whole group, and we understand the reputation that precedes him. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see the kid play. I got to say, I love his mentality. I love his sort of mindset as he goes about things. But as we know, he's going to have to show it on the field.
I agree. And that's another question I was going to ask you. J.C. Latham, switching from left tackle to right tackle, especially going his roots back to Alabama. How do you feel about that? Maybe going into his shoes that he's a little more comfortable at the right side more than the left side.
Yeah, I think hopefully it'll be a seamless fit for him. And, JC's done a lot of work in the offseason. He looks like a totally different person, honestly. He's cut a lot of weight. He even cut the hair. Like, he's done a total 180, and he and coaching staff have talked a lot about, some of the things that he needed to work on going into the offseason, and he's done that. And like you said, he kind of gets back into a more natural position where, for me, that's part of the value of taking him with the 7th overall pick, is he's a guy that can play left tackle for you, can hold it down. I thought he played above average for a rookie that's switching over to the left side last year. And he can also kick out to the right. It gives you that flexibility that if you're the Titans, there's somebody out there that you can bring in free agency to hold down that left side. That's Dan Moore Jr. And you have a left tackle that can easily move over to right tackle and, in fact, might have a higher ceiling on that side of the ball. So I think a year 2 leap should absolutely be the expectation for J.C. Latham, and it'll be up to him to live up to that.
Another question is, too, I mean, in the offseason, we saw Dan Moore get $87.5 million for 5 years. How do you feel about that signing? How do you feel he'll be impacting on the new offensive line?
It's a lot of money, man. It's a lot of money. So we'll see. We'll see. I have a hard time seeing Dan Moore Jr. live up to that number because that number places him in the top 10 in the NFL, right? And Dan Moore Jr. at no point in his career has been a top 10 or even top third kind of left tackle. If he can just come in here, though, and just give this team stable, competent left tackle play, consistently available, that's another thing that he has been throughout his career. That's something the Titans have looked for in all of their free agent signings, something they all have in common. If he can just not be somebody that bogs down the proceedings on offense, then to me it's a good signing. But to ask him to live up to that contract, that's a whole other discussion. I understand the market is the market, and that accelerates faster than ever now in today's NFL. But if he can just be league average at that spot for the Titans, you're talking about a huge improvement from what they've seen really since Taylor Lewan was holding it down back in 2021.
Another thing I was going to ask you, too, we had a transition between front offices, between Rand and Mike Borgonzi. What did you see in this offseason that you were kind of thinking, what if Rand was in office? Then what if Mike Borgonzi did this offseason?
Do you mean like what, maybe if things would have looked differently if Rand was still the GM?
Yeah, differently than if he was still here.
Sure. Man, that's always hard to say, especially with this organization, with kind of the topsy-turvy nature of who's calling the shots at any given point. Because Rand Carthon gets fired, and then what happens next? Chad Brinker is kind of named the grand poobah of all things football for the Titans, right? He's got final say. He's the president of football operations. So it's a good question because I think the Titans as an organization wanted to get away from that approach that was sort of the sugar rush, throwing money at free agents, try to get as good as we can, as fast as we can. That's traditionally not worked in the NFL. It's like in college, right? When you look at teams that try to flip things every year in the transfer portal, well, you got to have a pretty high hit rate in the transfer portal. And sometimes we see it work in the case of an Ole Miss or a Colorado. Sometimes we see it fail miserably in the case of a Florida State, right? Where you're bringing a bunch of guys in and it's their first year in the system. And it's hard to create a culture from there. It's hard to create any consistency. Titans obviously didn't last year, and that's been a huge focal point of this offseason is trying to manufacture some leadership and trying to do things the right way, which is basically build a roster from the ground up, drafting, developing, and, to use the Titans kind of catchphrase here, retaining. I don't know if that was going to be the path with Rand Carthon. So I think last offseason didn't do him any favors, man, with just the way things played out.
And that's kind of, I heard you, Buck, were talking about this morning, L'Jarius Sneed going into this season. Are you any concerned that he wasn't out there during June training camp and you think you'll see him more in July?
Of course, you have to be concerned, right? I mean, this is a guy that comes over on that money and has that reputation of being the best at his possession, and he doesn't necessarily play up to that level, and then he just doesn't play, period. And then it's been one thing or another, right? It's not even really been the knee issue, but this bone bruise situation, this degenerative issue where he's had to get looked at, and it's been a million different things at a million different points, and he hasn't been out there for the entire offseason program. So, yeah, I think you're concerned until you see it, right? At no point has L'Jarius Sneed been L'Jarius Sneed. I'd imagine he has a point to prove. He has said as much in the audio that we played on the show today, but I think absolutely you have to kind of attack that, come to that from a point of concern, if that makes sense, and then adjust from there. There's nothing about the Sneed experience in Tennessee right now that gives you any confidence about L'Jarius Sneed in 2025.
So 2 more questions on the Titans, and obviously we're talking to the hosts of the Nashville SC, especially I know you're very excited about that. We'll get to that in a minute. Quarterback situation. You got Cam Ward. I know Will Levis is steering the quarterback room. You got Brandon Allen. What do you think is going to happen heading from now to August? Do you see Levis traded, cut? What do you think predictions going into the regular season is going to happen with Will?
Well, look, there's some things, man, that just don't really happen in the NFL. One of those things is a team kind of puts chips in on a young quarterback, approaches the season building around that player, kind of with that see what you got approach, it not working, and then the team moving on, finding the replacement, and then that player, that quarterback, being retained in a backup role or what have you. Just doesn't happen when you look across the league. You look at examples like Drew Lock and Sam Howell and Desmond Ridder and Kenny Pickett. When it's over, it's over.
Right.
We understand that the Will Levis experience as the Titans' starting quarterback is over. They drafted, hopefully, their new franchise quarterback with the number 1 pick. So I fully anticipate him not being on this team. With that being said, it would very much benefit the Tennessee Titans for Will Levis to, at every turn, look like an improved player in training camp, in the preseason. And who knows? Will Levis is a high upside guy, always has been. And the Titans got a 7th from Malik Willis last year, right? All those other quarterbacks I just mentioned, teams got something out of those players to move on from them. So I have also a hard time imagining that the market will just be totally bare by the time we get to roster cutdown day. I suppose you never know, but long-winded way of answering your question, Brandon Allen's this team's backup quarterback, right? They brought him in. Brian Callahan's worked with him in Cincinnati. Brandon Allen is a guy who knows what he is at this point in his career. And for the Titans this year, is it more important for your backup quarterback to win you 1 or 2 games and get you to 7, 8 wins, whatever it might be? Or is it more important for your backup quarterback to just be as valuable a resource for Cam Ward as possible? For me, it's the latter. And Brandon Allen fits that mold a lot more than Will Levis does, in my opinion.
Yeah, you bring a good point about that as well. I got a fun one for you. I know you've been a Titans fan for probably a long time, longer than I have since we moved here to Tennessee. Do you have a favorite memory just either being at the stadium or either watching on television? It's just We remember Chris Johnson, long touchdown, Derrick Henry, long touchdown. Do you have a favorite memory in your mind that it just sticks to you to this day?
Man, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, maybe it speaks to the kind of sports fan I am. The heartbreaks kind of stick a little, in the memory a little bit more. I always think about that 2008 Ravens loss when the Titans were the 1 seed and Chris Johnson leaving injured. To keep it on the positive note, there's one that I always come back to is that drive, the 99-yard drive, Vince Young leading the Titans down the field to find Kenny Britt in the back of the end zone for the game-winning touchdown against the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know, they converted like 3 fourth downs. Kurt Warner is the quarterback of the Cardinals on the other side. I mean, just a crazy game. There were some fun moments with Vince Young, right? I mean, those were kind of some of my middle school years where VY is doing some crazy things, and Titans started 0-6, and that was part of that run that they won 6 in a row and were back in the playoff hunt. That's definitely one that sticks out for sure. But unfortunately for me, the painful ones, for some reason, leave a little bit more of a lasting memory, I got to say.
I agree with that one. So we're going to transition. Nashville SC. I'm still learning about Nashville soccer. You're the man to talk to. How do you feel about Nashville SC this year? They're on a roll, right? They're on a roll this season.
They're fantastic, man. Yeah, they're playing really well. This is a team that kind of came into MLS in 2020, expansion team. Gary Smith was the manager, and they had a lot of veteran talent, guys that have been around the block in MLS and they were just hard to play against, right? They had a good spine, very rock solid defensive team. And then you get kind of a catalyst in Hani Mukhtar, signed this star player that you find in Denmark that's bounced around in Europe a little bit, finds a home in MLS, and you're able to do some things in those first few years, but there was a significant ceiling on Nashville in those years. And so they hired B.J. Callahan last summer, former U.S. men's national team assistant, who, the hope is he comes in, takes it to another level from a player development standpoint, from just a mentality approach standpoint in their style of play. They've done that and then some. Here they are. They're number 3 in the East. They're 2 points back of the very top of the MLS standings. Sam Sturridge is the lead scorer in Major League Soccer. Hani Mukhtar is still a bona fide star, and they have depth across the board in midfield, on the back line. Andy Nahar at right back is an MLS All-Star. The Honduran international has been a huge spark. They've just been so fun to watch, and so it's been cool to see them turn it around and do all of the things B.J. Callahan said they would do. And look, it's a tough time for pro sports in Nashville, right? Titans and Reds are pretty far away. Nashville SC, it's been really fun to kind of be along for the ride as Nashville brings a contender to Music City for the first time, really, since the Titans were in the AFC Championship or the Preds were in the Stanley Cup Final.
That's another question I asked for you. Do you think Nashville deserves an MLB team?
Look, does Nashville deserve an MLB team? Could Nashville handle an MLB team? Sure, from an infrastructure standpoint. I have my questions about it. I think that the majority of baseball fans in Nashville have their team already. And you could say that was the case for the NFL here in the late 90s, right? If you were an NFL fan, you probably had a team. And maybe that's true, but I also think that the NFL was a little more of an untapped market here than the MLB is. If you catch my drift, I don't know how many new people you're going to get to suddenly start investing their time in baseball that weren't before. So I don't know. I'm skeptical of it. I don't know that the money is there. Would it be cool? Of course, right? I mean, I'm sure that there would be a lovely facility, that it would be a big thing for tourism, but I'm very skeptical that they would have a legitimate core fan base that would kind of drive everything. You know what I mean? I worry that if Nashville got an MLB team, that it would be a bit of a fad thing to just kind of go to and hang out. And I love the Nashville Sounds. We already kind of have that here. So maybe I'm just on the skeptical side of that one.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to Atlanta in a couple of days to go watch my Halos and play in Georgia, so hopefully that goes well.
There you go.
So, there you go. Obviously, big Tennessee Wolves fan, right? You're a big Wolves fan. You guys had a thing this offseason. Nico left. How do you feel about the Wolves heading into this season, and who's you guys going to starting quarterback? That should be interesting as well. I heard there's a competition going on over there.
Yeah, it's an all-out competition. So, obviously, Nico, that was a very messy divorce, as you know, and then Joey Aguilar comes in. Former App State, former UCLA quarterback. He'll compete with 2 of the guys that were already in that room, recruited to Tennessee by Josh Heupel and his staff, and George McIntyre and Jake Merklinger. And Aguilar's going to be the favorite for the job because he's the guy they brought in. He's the guy, there's that NIL money that's associated to it, of $1.5 million in that ballpark. And he's the most experienced of the 2. I had a great season at App State 2 years ago, broke multiple single-season records. The whole team took a step back last year, Aguilar included. And we'll see. but I think Tennessee fans are kind of bracing themselves this year for that sort of 8-4 level season to maybe gear up for 2026 and beyond, where you've got a 5-star quarterback coming in Faison Brandon, and you feel like you kind of got the rug pulled out from under you a little bit this past offseason. And I think Tennessee fans are happy with the way Josh Heupel handled that, but there's no question they didn't get better from a football standpoint at the quarterback position. So it's going to be fascinating. It's this big question, a big mystery box of a season for Tennessee, no doubt.
We got one more question for Lucas before he's got to go. Lucas, you're a great broadcaster and following you for a very long time. Why do you love your job? And also, do you have a advice or two to become a broadcaster or do what you're doing today?
Wow. I mean, look, how could you not, right? It's what I wanted to do since 8th grade. Something just kind of clicked. It was like, okay, that's it. Never a plan B, never looking back. And so, yeah, look, it's something that we're really lucky to do, especially in a town that I consider my home, the teams I grew up with. And, getting to do soccer, a sport that I'm passionate about in the city that I love, is definitely a dream come true. So, and getting to do it with people that you enjoy being around. That's the other thing, too, right? I mean, Buck, as much grief as we give him, right. He and Robert, getting to spend time with those guys every day is kind of a highlight of your day. And that makes it go by a little bit faster. But, look, in terms of the advice, I'm not this grand, sort of poobah and handing down advice on how to get here. But what I can tell you is you just get your hands on reps, no matter how insignificant they may seem. The thing that I always tell people is if you want any hope of ever being good, you have to be bad first. You know what I mean? And when you're bad, you don't want a whole lot of people on the other end listening. So it's okay to be talking into a microphone by yourself in a stadium, to be calling high school football at whatever level, right? For whatever radio station, live stream you can, just reps. And then you kind of just see what breaks from there. You be persistent, get those reps in as much as you possibly can, and you'd be surprised at how things can kind of turn out.
So Lucas Panzica, 104.5 The Zone Studios. Appreciate you joining on the show. First guest. Very, very fun to talk to you and get to know some knowledge from you.
Man, I appreciate you having me, and happy to be back anytime.
There you go. Happy 4th of July weekend, and we'll see each other next time this season.
Same to you, buddy. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it. All right, that's the end of the episode of the Titans Talk 615 podcast. Yo, this week was very, very fun filming. I had a fun time, blast. Meant a lot to me personally. Definitely want to say shout out to Lucas once again. He definitely did a great job. Check him out on Instagram, YouTube, and X. Check him out on 104.5 The Zone with Buck Rising at 10 a.m. Definitely check him out on Nashville SC. Definitely been watching a lot more games myself, so it was very, very fun to get more information on that. Y'all, we had a couple trades today before I end the show. We got Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey both heading to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is there a Steeler heading out? Could be. Could he be heading to the Tennessee Titans? Could be. I'll talk about that next week and let you guys know who that is, who USA Today proposed a trade for the Tennessee Titans, maybe landing their future star. Talk about that next week. Hope you have a blessed 4th of July weekend. Peace out, buddy.